Now, this is an issue that I've talked about quite a bit on the Fowler Show, but we didn't address it in last week's show, but I thought now was the time to talk about it. So as many of you know, hundreds of fast food workers in New York City began walking off the job last week because they wanted to demand higher wages from their boss. Now, anybody who knows anything about New York City understands this one thing. Living in New York is not cheap. Not by any stretch or ounce of the imagination. These fast food workers they basically are surviving on $7.25 an hour. An hour. And this argument about, oh, if they're teenagers and this. No, these are people that have families, America. People with 1, 2, 3 kids. They decided to strike. And they demanded a $15 an hour wage and the right to form a union and organize a right to form a union and be part of a union. And, Republicans condemned them. Fox News said that they're sort of the union bosses are out and the union bosses are supporting them. But let's look at the facts here. Recent profit growth from the top 3 low wage employers. McDonald's, one of the companies that received, that got workers struck in New York, they've received 130% increase in profit during this past year. Yums, KFC, Taco Bell, all those food companies, they received a 45% increase in profits this year. Walmart, the number 3 on the list, and the lower ones, they received a 23% increase. Now, no, they didn't strike on Walmart, but they did strike on Yums and McDonald's. Walmart workers struck during Black Friday. And the first thing I want to do is I want to commend all these workers for striking and for these workers for standing up for their rights and saying we have had enough. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Now, I want to tie that into something that we've seen from the president's budget that I talked about earlier in the show. This whole idea of the president's demanding a raise on the minimum wage, right? And how we should we should attach the minimum wage or peg it to inflation. That means when the cost of living goes up, the minimum wage goes up and Congress doesn't have to touch it. This would solve the problem in New York City because what it would do is it would allow for these workers to start out making $10.10 an hour. And then every time cost of living goes up every year, that number is adjusted. So they would get more money. Now, the argument has always been that, they're low-skilled workers and they get paid what they deserve and blah, 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 blah. To all those conservatives out there who make money hand over fist, remember this one thing, that maybe not you, but maybe your parents or your parents' parents or your parents' parents or your parents' parents started out working a low-wage, low-skill job. And depending upon how old you are, they benefited from the power of the labor union to make sure they got fair wages in the weekend and Labor Day and a fair wage or a good wage for an equal day's pay for a good day, equal day's work. America, we have got to do better. I've talked about the minimum wage before, but this time I am standing in solidarity for all those workers who have struck in New York City, for all those workers that will strike in the future and that demand higher wages. We are the richest country in the world, and when companies like McDonald's can make 130% in additional profits, and companies that own KFC and Taco Bell can make 45% in additional profits, you cannot tell me, and you will not tell me, they can't afford to pay their workers a couple extra dollars. You can't tell me that. And this whole argument that, if you pay a minimum wage, that means that we will have less workers in the workplace. That is also not true. That's the same argument we heard conservatives make when they made the argument that if you raise taxes on millionaires and billionaires, all these jobs would disappear. Well, guess what? Ever since we've raised taxes on millionaires and billionaires, we've added more jobs to the economy. That argument is false, it's flawed, and I reject that argument completely and totally on face. We need to demand more of corporations in this country. Because let me tell you something. McDonald's, Walmart, and Yums, all these corporations operate in other developed countries. And in Germany, and in Europe, and in France, and in Spain, they pay a higher minimum wage and they do not complain about it. You don't hear McDonald's in England complaining about paying their workers too much money. You don't hear that. You don't hear that. You hear that we have a thriving European market. We're thriving in the European market. Same thing for Walmart. They're thriving in the European market, but in Europe, they're required to pay their workers more wages. And it does not, America, lead to a loss in jobs, because Germany is a great example where they have a low unemployment rate and yet still they demand higher wages and demand more benefits, and the union is strong and going well. So don't you sit here and give me this ass load of an argument that makes absolutely and positively no sense. What we need to do in this country as progressives, as black people, as brown people, as Latinos, as LGBTers, we are those people that are being oppressed. We are those people that are being looked down upon. We are those where pale, stale, and male people are having their way, and they're doing everything possible to keep us down, because they understand that if we get empowered and we get the ability to do more, and we get empowered, we can do more. We can take over this country. We can run this country and make it the country that it needs to be. So what I'm saying to all of you out there is that let's get together, let's stand in solidarity, because as MLK said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Let's get out there, let's get active, let's fight this, let's stand with these workers, let's continue to stand with them as they fight for higher wages.